Okay. Taking Nampak, sorry, Nambo. Who else? Who else wants to share?
I would like to share.
Oh yeah, please go ahead. What do you
Hi,
remember after
Victoria.
reading it?
Hi, good morning, everyone. For me, when I see those stories, I would say the emotion I feel first of all is anger, and then what usually resonates is the porosity that we experience in government lapses and why this thing happened in the first place. But mostly the emotion that sticks with me is anger.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Anyone else? What do you remember after reading a story of an attack? Nambal said he remembers casualties. Vicky said, how you feel, the porosity, how it doesn't seem like, anyone is being held accountable, or if institutions are being questioned around what is going on. I think Oyeyemi had a hand up. What you want to share as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, I really don't like going straight to the point. I love buttressing my take. So recently, one of our storyteller in the community posted something on his platform, on his status. He said, as media practitioners, we should actually take, like sometimes we should learn to take a break out of the media space or social media, even if it's just for a day or two. And we know, I mean, as journalists and practitioners, we have this addictive like thing with news. We always want to be filled in with what is going on around us in our community, in our society, to stay informed. And like you rightly said, we don't just tell stories, we also read and consume the stories, most of the stories we tell. So most times when I read conflict stories, it affects me mentally, to be candid. I feel this sadness, this like there's just this air about how you read those stories, and then it resonates in a like it affects you, your mental health in some ways. And then you begin to feel this rage, this anger, that why is this happening. I mean, there are a whole lot of things like that, sadness, anger towards so many things, and I think that's it basically for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Oyeyemi. And everything everyone has shared is valid. I mean, we're all human beings, and certain narratives push us to feel a certain type of way. And if the media repeatedly uses the same kind of language and framing to share some of these things, then the only result is for people to feel hopeless, for people to feel anger, for people to feel like what's even the point? What's really happening in this country? Do we have any do we have a say? Is are we safe? Questions like that come up. So, but yes, all of this comes from what you remember after reading a conflict story. Some people will say they remember how many people were said to have been killed because the numbers are there prominent in the headline. Most people remember who was blamed. Sometimes they even brand it a certain ethnicity or tribe. They say it was Fulani headsmen, or they'll say it's Christians being attacked. Oh, it's Muslims who have died today. Or it's both Christians and Muslims who are being attacked. These identities, these ways of framing stories shape our thoughts, our beliefs, and our worldview and our understanding of conflict and insecurity. So these are I just wanted us to sort of create a context around how we feel when we read a conflict story, right? And everything everyone has shared is relevant. So, but this is just so that we understand that journalism is not just presenting the facts. It's not about who tells the story first. It is that in telling the story first, in presenting just the facts, in announcing the new mayhem that has happened, was shaping what becomes accepted, was shaping what people understand about conflict and insecurity. And I want you to put that at the back of your mind as we move forward. Now, let's consider some of the headlines that have been dominating our news space in the past few weeks, and I found this online, just trying to search what are people talking about, what is trending, what are the widely read headlines in the past few weeks, and this is what came up, right? And I want you to look at some of these headlines carefully. The first one reads, "Protest erupts in Plateau at funeral of slain victims over arrest of youth as bandits." The other one by AP says, "Islamic State militants kill at least 29 in an attack on a village in northeastern Nigeria." Another one says, 1,402 Nigerians killed, abducted by terrorists in 96 days. And then this last one is on xenophobia, 2 Nigerians killed in South Africa. So if you're like, well, most youths, about 70% of them that Zikoko magazine says get their news from social media, and they have this in their report. I think it's the 2025 report or so, where they showed that most of us, young people, as far as you're young Nigeria, you get your news off social media. So if you're one of those 70% who gets their news off social media, you would agree that this has been some of the conversations that have been happening around attacks in Plateau, around terrorists killing people in Kwara, in Borno, in Kogi. There's just been different versions of it. So I want you to look at these headlines carefully and just share with me, how do you think these headlines shape our worldview and our own understanding of insecurity and conflict? If you were to assess the security situation of Nigeria, and this is what you have in the news, mostly, as a representation of the current reality, how does it shape your worldview? How would you say it shapes your understanding? How would you grade the level of security in Nigeria? Anyone can unmute and answer.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mrs. Dorojaye. Regarding the grading, it is going to be poorly graded because of all of these headlines. They are the reality we face. So if it is going to be over 10, it's going to be, let's say, maybe minus. Let's say maybe minus 5/10. If it's over 100, that's going to be like let's say maybe 10%. So it's going to be poorly graded.
All right. Thank you, Waris. Anyone else? Study the headlines and tell me, what understanding are you getting? What message is it conveying to you? When you start to tweet about the level of Nigeria, hello? What would you say after seeing this headline?
Okay. After seeing this headline, if I were to be outside Nigeria, I would think that Nigeria is no place to go, because it seems like just insecurity is everywhere, right? And there's no safe place, because that's what for me, that's what these headlines are portraying, and drawing from last session, some teaching I attended, or some conference where Mojita Labi, the founder and lead editor-in-chief of Dev Reporting, he said that we journalists seems to be the ones demarketing Nigeria, right? And by the kind of news we keep giving out all the times. And I think this is a literal example of this. While we cannot escape the fact that there has been a recent surge in insecurity, I think we can do better by looking at maybe progressively reporting these things, or reporting with empathy sometimes, and clear understanding. I also remember a case that was shared recently where when there was this general that was almost kidnapped was killed, rather, the first general that was killed in the Northeast. I learned that they got to know that guy has not been saved because of the reporting that was done by Umango. No dissing, really, no bad blood. But that was just an example of how critical journalism can either be supportive of our society or help in demarketing our society and painting selling very ugly narrative and all of that. So I think generally this will give us a kind of a view that there's a whole lot. The country is not safe. A lot of people are being killed, and the government is doing nothing really. But we can do better.
Thank you, Nambo, and I agree with almost everything you shared. Does anybody else want to add anything? Okay, so yes, I vitally agree with you, right? In conflict situation, journalism doesn't just sit outside the story. It shapes how the story is understood. So there's a difference between presenting facts, telling the truth, but shaping what people believe and how people act after reading your story. I think that's why we're having this conversation, because there is a responsibility and a duty that you have as a journalist. Yes, and even with how news is shared these days, I think journalists are starting to see that it's much more important for you. It's not enough for you to just share information anymore. And sharing information would have this kind of headline where you just want to show what is happening. Oh, an attack has happened, let's quickly report it. That's you sharing information. We have to go above that layer now as the world is moving so fast to shape what people understand when an attack has happened, when people have been gunned down, or when there are dire security risks and threats happening. I think as our job as journalists is to understand that line and toe it carefully. It's not enough for you to just present information anymore. Anybody can do that. Your job as a journalist is highly much more is the stakes are higher now, and it's about shaping what people see, what people understand when an attack has happened, what people understand to be the truth, and how it impacts their own behavior and the questions they ask authorities and institutions, right? So, like you said, when people come across these kind of stories, these kind of headlines, what happens? What's the result? What kind of conversations happen online? And if you just scroll down your timeline or you just stay online, I believe almost everyone here spends at least not less than 1 hour per day online. It's much more, but I'm saying even if you are so disciplined, you spend at least 1 hour doom scrolling. All of us are almost cursed with that in this day and age. So if you spend even just 1 hour on social media, you start to see the narratives that are being repeatedly shared, that are repeatedly amplified. And it is because of how the news is shaping our understanding of what's happening around insecurity and conflict. So I picked up some of these so that you see the kind of conversations that come up when our dominating headlines are framed in a certain way. This person said Christians are being hunted like animals in Nigeria. An Islamist group invaded a Christian village and started shooting everyone in sight. They are killing Christians on Eid and offering them as human sacrifices. The media remains silent. This person, and if you've been following the conversations around what's happening in South Africa, which is really scary, I have a friend who is doing her master's in South Africa, and the conversations we've had in the past 48 hours is she's in my prayers. But I can imagine the state of mind of any African who is currently in South Africa and vulnerable, right? And if you go online where all these conversations are happening, it's even much scarier because people are sharing videos, people are sharing different kinds of clips, whether they are verified or unverified. People are just adding fuel to the fire. And it's almost like we're all sitting on a ticking time bomb. So when I saw this post, I said I must add it to the. Someone said, if you're an immigrant in South Africa, just leave because the next step after this is genocide. Now, again, it is true that South Africans are standing up and asking people to leave their country. Everyone knows the results, what can result from that, from whatever it is that is happening. But the few headlines I have seen so far puts it in such a way that you have no other choice but to panic. If you have any connection with anyone in SA or have family in SA, you can imagine what is happening in your head or going through your head right now. You can imagine all the options you're trying to flip through to understand, is this person safe? Am I safe? What's going on? So, and this is a result of the headlines that we are seeing, right? Somebody said, breaking, they started again in Plateau. People are being killed as we speak. Whether that is true or not, they've hopped on a trending headline, and this is what they believe is currently happening, and they've pushed it further on their own platform as well. So just imagine the wildfire and how it is spreading just from the headlines that we all see. Somebody said, this is what they are doing to our people. How long will we keep quiet? Almost like they are asking you to get more angry. How long will we keep quiet? You've been abused. You are this. Okay, let's all fight. It's like they are gingering you to come and fight. They are gingering you to, start attacking your own neighbors as well. Government is silent. Why are citizens dying? Shame. See what happened today. This person shared a video. I couldn't bring up the video here, but if you see the video, you understand how dangerous these narratives are. If you are from this area, which is probably Plateau or Benue or one place where an attack happened, something is going on, stay inside. And this last one, this is not random, this is targeted. Open your eyes. I put all of this together to just show you the resulting narratives from the kind of headlines that we are constantly exposed to, right? So it's not passive. It's not that you are scrolling and reading news and it's not affecting your life. It is directly shaping your worldview. It is coming into your conversations. It is shaping the kind of conversations you have. It is influencing what you tell, what you believe about what is happening in Nigeria. Again, it's not whether or not this is true. There's a difference between presenting facts, there's a difference between presenting truth, and there's a duty to help people understand what is really going on so that they can make decisions that will impact their lives and their safety in their immediate environment, right? So when you understand that your role as a journalist goes beyond just presenting the story, and some of you said when you read a story, you remember casualties, you remember pain, you feel pain, you feel anger, you feel helpless, in the situation. When you consider all of this, I want you to reverse back into your role as a storyteller and a journalist. What do you think carries more weight? What is your duty? I've tried to explain the process from when we break a headline or when there's a headline published in the news and some type of language and framing is what is predominant. And you see what it results to, the kind of conversations people have online, what people believe is really going on. You as a journalist, what do you think is more important? Is it if you're doing conflict reporting, is it your responsibility to inform or your duty of care? So which one carries more weight for you as a journalist? And anyone can unmute to answer. Which one carries more weight? You get a call, for example, that there's been an attack in a community. The details are still unclear, but people are already posting different versions of it online. Do you report immediately or do you wait?
Well, it depends on the media room you're working for. If you're working for the likes of Star Reporter, just like that. Or if you're working for channels, also you post like that. Anything that is going to draw controversy around headlines, that's going to bring them Twitter money, that's going to bring a lot of money. Definitely want to report unconfirmed news in a way that is going to create chaos, is going to create violence, is going to create a lot of controversy. But as a solution journalist, one of the things that you'd have to do is you need to firstly understand the report of the news. Who exactly is, like, how is it, where is it coming from? Because you need to gather the facts, you need to gather the causes of the situation, uh, how it can be prevented so that something similar would not happen. Okay, now let me just give an example. For example, now, let's say maybe a local government in Ogun State now, they said that there is a violence happening, and then there is no confirmation yet. What comes to the mind of people first would be maybe Fulani herdsmen attacked the community. But if we properly look into the situation, it might be the clash between Omonile and all these street talks. So, but then it's just about getting the facts right first before trying to post on socials to just let people read and start causing another havoc.
Thank you, Waris. So are you team A or B? When an attack has happened, do you want to immediately get accurate information so that everybody knows what is already happening? Or do you pause? Do you wait? Do you want more information? Do you consider the potential harm of your reporting and what it could cause to individuals? Which one do you think carries more weight? Is it your responsibility to immediately inform? Because again, people are already posting on social media, so the media cannot be waiting. People are already posting this news on social media and different versions, like you said, whether it's Omonile, whether it's Fulani headsmen, different versions of the stories already going out. So if you're in that situation, you're a reporter posted to that community, for example, where the attack has happened, and your editor has given you an assignment to cover proceedings from that community, and such an attack has happened. What do you think? What is your first response? What do you do? Do you immediately gather all the accurate facts that you can and publish, knowing that it's already spreading on social media? Or do you wait? And if you wait, why? Why are you waiting?
Okay,
Hi,
Emma,
Waris. Are you here with us?
yes, I'm here. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you,
Hello.
Waris. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Well, let me. Okay, from my own angle now, I am going.
Yeah.
I'm B because in any report I
Yeah,
want to
team
write,
B.
I always, yes, in B, I always want to consider I consider a lot of things while writing the report because a report from a media room supersede existing ones because you can actually shape narrative as a media house because a lot of people put their trust in you. They believe that there is a lot of professionalism put into that report. So they believe that whatever is coming from you is 100% accurate. So I am Team B. Yes, that is
Okay.
that is it.
Thank you, Waris. Anybody else? Are you
Oh,
team A or team B? An attack has
okay.
happened. Do you immediately want to report or do you wait? And why do you wait?
Hello. Um,
Go ahead.
Okay, I think for me it's very hard to say if to take a stand on either being in either of the team. I think both team A and both team B, depending on the peculiarity of the situation. Peculiarity of the situation in the sense that if the social media is being flooded with wrong narrative, right, and maybe divisive conversations that are now heating up the and encouraging maybe some sort of reprisals or that. I think as a media person, we also have a responsibility to do a kind of reporting that would try to beat down all of this narrative that are hitting up, the atmosphere at the time. That's having gotten or confirmed initially that yes, there is an uproar somewhere or there's a crisis. For example, instead of just reporting that, oh, people are being killed, the road is being barricaded, you can go ahead and say, okay, securities have been mobilized to, even when the securities are not mobilized, securities have been mobilized to a so location where there has been reported cases of so and so, and though we've not confirmed the intensity of this, we hope that they get there in good time and everything will remain to normalcy. So in this instance, you're helping those who are standing. Maybe some of the conflict actors may be listening to radio, and that could maybe call for de-escalation, and if for the securities as well, you could bring them to the notice that this thing is happening here, which will be followed by maybe a direct call or something. And for those who are not open to, for those who are spreading the wrong narrative, when they get this kind of reporting, they themselves will know that this is the situation now, and there seems to be everything is under control. While for the B part, I think would now have a long time impact on the entire conflict and the entire situation. by making sure that, yes, you understand it properly, you do, get who and who is involved, what is the situation really, really. So I think we as a media, we have, first off, in my newsroom, we have a responsibility to first of all observe. After observing it critically, make sure that we do not add to the fire, and if there's need for us to put up maybe some sort of informations that would help the process of peace building or the process of de-escalation, we do that. But if it's really not important, then we wait to put together our fact before we go to broadcasting. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nambo. And I agree. Dr. Zubair in the comment section says A and B can go hand in hand, because in some situation you're required to do live reporting, and during the reporting as a professional journalist, we're expected to consider the perspective of the public and retrieve or restrict some sensitive information. Yeah, I agree. For me personally, I'm a team B, because I just love solutions journalism, and I think applying the lens is always very powerful. But what I think is right is that we need a form of balance. Balance is key when we're reporting or covering conflict, right? And this is because in conflict situations, speed can be dangerous. You can put out the information now and it will cause panic. You don't know where anyone is when they are receiving such a news. You don't know if they are right in the middle of, the attack, and your news or your story about it can cause even more panic. It can provoke retaliation. So you can escalate the tension that is already happening. And in some cases, when you overdo it, it can even damage your newsroom's credibility. I think it was Nambo who mentioned that in his own newsroom, they observe before, they put out things. And that's the kind of, that just shows you that if you put out wrong information or half truth, or you put out any form of falsehood and it comes back, it can damage your reputation as a journalist or even the newsroom's credibility that you work for. So there are times, again, balance is key. There are times when reporting an attack, sharing verified updates, informing the public of, the risk that is involved or the threats that are happening is very critical. But we must always do this with a sense of duty. And what does that sense of duty look like? What's that duty of care that we owe citizens, that we owe our readers? What's that duty of care? Right? What is your duty as a journalist in conflict? When you're doing conflict reporting, what is your duty? Again, there's a difference between your responsibility to inform people because you're a journalist and the duty of care that you must anchor your work on, right? And that's what we're considering now. So what is your duty as a journalist in conflict? One, you verify before reporting, right? It's not enough for you to maybe see the press statements released by the police or the army or whatever group, a CSO or whatever, and use that as basis for your entire story. Should be this prominent or this reputable CSO has released the story, or they've shared that their team members were on the field and it was 50 people who died. Okay, that means we have 50 casualties. Okay, let's report it. We have enough information to run with this story. It's not enough for you to look at what the police is saying. There are times where the police would reduce figures or increase depending on the kind of agenda and propaganda they are trying to push. So it's not enough to consider one source. You must consider multiple sources and get various accounts of what has happened. If you have your own sources, even great. But the important thing is to reach out and get several accounts of what has happened to ascertain the truth so that you can push out the correct version, the correct empowering version of the attack or whatever it is of the conflict you're reporting on. The second is to report without inflaming. This means your language and framing is very important. And we just looked at some of the headlines from earlier. It's not that it is not true that those attacks happened. It's not, nobody is lying. Nobody is saying you should tell lies. Nobody is saying you should ignore danger when it has occurred or when something bad has happened. Nobody is saying that. It's how you present it. How you present your fact is much more important than you just presenting the facts, right? So report without inflaming. Use language. For example, you want to cover EndSARS. Maybe everyone remembers what happened during EndSARS. What were the dominant headlines that we all came across? I'll give you one example that I pulled up from online. One newspaper or one media house said, violent protests erupt across Lagos as hoodlums take over streets. Now, that is true. If you witnessed what happened during EndSARS, I'm sure you can remember the violent protest, as they put it, hoodlums taking over, narratives changing in and forming in real time. We saw how the protest went from people people demanding accountability from the police to people turning it into this versus them. At some point, it became an ethnic thing. At some point, it became a tribal war. At some point, it was young people versus the old people. At some point, it was that the hoodlums and the young people, trying to scatter everywhere, trying to damage things and loot resources. And, different narratives were being formed in real time because newspapers decided to frame their headlines use a certain language to frame what was happening. Now, compare the headline I just read out, violent protests erupt across Lagos as hoodlums take over streets, to something like young Nigerians protest police brutality, demanding accountability and reform. Is it not still the truth? Is it different from if you think about these two headlines, and maybe I should have put them on the slide so that for emphasis, right? But if you compare both stories, you will see that they are still sharing the same truth, which is that people are protesting, but the angle, the vantage point, the solutions lens is being applied, and it gives depth and much more nuance to the story that is being told than the one that suggests chaos and anarchy. So one headline suggests chaos and anarchy, the second suggests grievance. Youths are demanding accountability and reform from the police, which is the truth, and it resulted in a protest, which is truth. So you are still reporting the truth, but you're applying a solutions lens. So as a journalist, your duty when you're doing conflict reporting is to report without inflaming. Use language and framing that will not add fuel to the fire, but will instead add depth and help your readers understand the situation even much clearly. When you say violent protests erupt across Lagos, nobody knows that anyone was it was about police brutality. That's completely missed, and most people just read headlines and move on before they even read the body of your story. So what kind of narrative are you pushing forward in times of conflict? That's something to always remember and put at the back of your mind. So again, what's your duty as a journalist in conflict? To minimize harm. We're living in such dangerous times where most people live on their phones, conversations and narratives happen every second. I think I saw a report where they said the average person is exposed to at least 96,000 posts per day. 96,000 posts per day. That's if you're a chronic social media user. You come across 96,000 different posts per day. How does that shape your mind, your thoughts, your beliefs, things that you see in the world? It's important to always consider that, especially as a journalist and a storyteller. What kind of conversation are you contributing to the 96,000 that the average person is coming across? And what are they repeatedly exposed to? Remember that your story is contributing to this. So our duty is to understand that narratives form from how facts are presented, not the actual fact. Yes, 20 people were killed, whether it was done by Fulani or any type of terrorist, whether ISWAP, whether Boko Haram, whether jihadist, whether bandit, whatever category they fall into. People have died, an attack has happened, people have been left vulnerable, people are getting displaced, people are having their lives being snatched for them by the second. But you as a journalist, what's your duty in ensuring that you don't come and add more wahala to what is already happening, and you understand the duty of presenting the story in a way that it gives depth, nuance, and understanding to the reader, as opposed to just getting them alarmed over what is going on. So it's our duty to minimize harm. And this happens with the way we frame our stories, the language that we use to shape conflict and how people understand it. Because whatever you put out there, once it's out there, it can cause harm, it can escalate tension, and it can just go out of hand. And you already saw it in the examples of what people were posting on Twitter, right? Someone said they are killing our people again in Plateau. This is this. What should be done? The government is keeping quiet. Shame. So you understand your role in shaping these narratives and what people understand by what is going on, right? Then this is probably one of the least done, because everyone thinks solutions journalism is like a brand, or I just assume everyone thinks solutions journalism is this brand of journalism that you have to, it's a special endeavor. Like if you want to do journalism and you decide that you want to use or you want to apply a solutions lens, then your reporting is completely different. It means that you have to go hunting for solutions for you to do the report. Like they take it away from the regular 24-hour news cycle. They believe the 24-hour news cycle should be about what has happened now, where did it happen, who got killed in case of conflict stories, right? They think that's where it ends. But that's not, and that's when you now want to do, if you want to come from a solutions place, it means that you have to go and look for how people are solving the problem around the attack. But that's not it. Solutions journalism is not a new form or brand or kind of journalism that you've not been doing before. It's really a call to apply a solutions lens. And in applying a solutions lens, it doesn't mean you don't tell the truth. It doesn't mean that you ignore the problem. It doesn't mean that you ignore the attack that's happened, the people that have died, and all of those things. As a matter of fact, when you apply a solutions lens, it forces you to go deeper into the story, and you're showing people what they are missing. You're creating avenues for people to understand on a much deeper level what is happening. So it's important that we recognize our duty as journalists in conflict. The other 2 points are to provide context. Always seek different credible voices to cover. Try to understand the underlying forces shaping or that has resulted in an attack. There are always underlying forces at play, especially in issues of conflict. During the workshop at Human Angle, we had a session on countering violence, extremism, and violence, or something like that. And for like 30 minutes, the facilitator went on about understanding the ideology and the factors that result in people becoming terrorists or bandits or, Boko Haram or jihadists. And they are different. He explained exhaustively how all these things are different. What happens, it could be that somebody was a trader and then they had their livelihood snatched from them due to some type of insecurity, and they are recruited to join the terrorist group or the armed bandits. They're recruited to join, and that changes the direction of their life forever. But when you are covering the story as a journalist, you focus on how this person is a terrorist, they've attacked a community. But what are the economic and social cultural factors that led the person there in the first place? That's important to understand, so that when you're reporting your story, you're providing context, you're helping your readers see the different perceptions, the different perspectives of what has happened that's caused the conflict, beyond you just saying 20 people were attacked, these people came, they attacked somebody, right? And then the last one is to challenge misinformation. And this goes beyond fact checking. It's not that somebody has posted a wrong or false information on social media and you think your duty is to come and quickly change or counter what the person has said. It's beyond fact checking. It's beyond saying this is false. It's beyond the community notes that you see added under different posts. It is about also flooding the same channels and consistently sharing truth that counter false narratives. So again, it's a duty to consistently do this if we understand that it is our duty to shape narratives around conflict and secure the safety and peace of the society, right? So having understood what our duty is as a journalist in conflict reporting, how do we apply the solutions lens? I just wanted to touch on this a bit so that we understand that, again, this is not you, and I don't know if I'm saying it well enough, but it's not you just looking for a solution to an attack. Because if we say conflict, what comes to mind is there's been an attack, so let's report it. Who died? Who was attacked? Who is responsible? Who is being blamed? What did the government do or what the government didn't do? Those are basic stuff when you're covering conflict. But applying a solutions lens is not that you are now looking for how people are responding to the attack that has happened. It is just like it says there, applying a solutions lens, meaning you're forcing yourself to sit down and wait to consider, will this story cause more harm? Is it likely to escalate tension? What angle do I want to come from? And how there are different ways to tell the truth. It doesn't have to come as an attack has happened, people died, or everybody scatter, everybody be afraid, everybody, there is danger in the air, or the world is about to come to an end. It doesn't always have to be that. When we're applying a solutions lens, it means we're just digging deeper and we're showing a different aspect of the same issue, but we're doing so with a sense of duty and responsibility. So a solutions lens strengthens your reporting. It doesn't soften it. In fact, it even holds power to account much more effectively. And we must always remember that every story we tell holds power, and stories we choose to share can bridge gaps, can inspire empathy, and can drive change. So let's bear that in mind. Our responsibility is not just to let people know what is happening. It is that we can shape what people believe, how people act, what they see, what they trust. And with that, when you have such a responsibility, you always have to consider applying the solutions lens when you're covering conflict, right? So how do we go about this? What are the do's and the don'ts? When you're applying a solutions lens to a conflict story or in reporting conflict, it doesn't mean that you ignore the problem, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to forget that an attack has happened or people have died. Instead, you ground your story. In fact, the attack is still your story. The attack is still your story. Whatever wrong has happened is still your story. Whatever is supposed to cause fear or that announces danger, it is still your story. But you don't ignore the problem. When you're applying the solutions lens, you ground your story in the verified issue. What happened? These people died, an attack happened, ISWAP attacked, bandits attacked, whatever it is, ground your story in the problem, in that reality. And we're going to look at some headlines, some negative framing versus solutions lens headlines for you to be able to understand this and see it play out in practice, right? So you first don't ignore the problem. It's not your job to ignore the problem. You don't, instead, and you have to interrogate the responses critically. You have to check, not because you are not going to focus on an attack or what has happened, and because you are focusing on solutions, you then ignore all the problems or, all the things, all the factors at play that has resulted in such an attack. Instead, you focus on how the response is directly linked to the problem. What's happening? How did it go about? How did it come about? How is it even, why should our readers be concerned about this? You also don't oversimplify complex conflicts. Because you're applying a solutions lens doesn't mean you now play down the issue, or you try to use positive words, or try to frame it in a way that, oh, you don't have to worry much about this, or if it's been if there's a historical account of how the attacks has repeatedly happened, if there's been a pattern, you don't simplify this. Instead, you show multiple factors, you show different forces at play, you speak to different actors, you talk to community members, you talk to the police or the army, you talk to people who are involved, who have been attacked, the victims, the survivors. You take all these accounts into consideration when you're applying the solutions lens. You also reach out to institutions and get their take on it. If the police is playing down the numbers or inflating the numbers so that it looks like their rapid squad is active or efficient, you consider all of these different versions before you ascertain the truth and report it. How else do you apply the solutions lens in conflict reporting? It doesn't mean that because you are reporting on how maybe a peace leading initiative is happening, or how people are, maybe it's a farmer header clash conflict report you're working on, how they are settling the issues, or what the community members are doing. It doesn't mean that you remove the accountability. If institutions like the government, whatever institution or the government needs to be accountable for your story or what has happened, you still bring them into the story. You still ask the questions that are needed to be asked if you were covering it as a problem-focused story. Applying a solutions lens doesn't mean you remove this. In fact, it begs you to do it even more. So if institutions are to be questioned, they must still be questioned. And don't create false balance. False balance is because they said you should apply solutions lens, you now focus on what you'll be looking for, a solution that is working, or that has some result, or that directly shows that yes, so this has happened, but this is what these people are doing, or not all solutions are effective. So you have to ensure that when you're covering, you're not producing a fiction. You're not trying to show that, but this is, maybe they said the solution. These people said that they are trying to settle discourse between farmers and headers. So it falls under solutions. This is how I would go about the story. It's much more than that. It's understanding that balance is showing this is what happened, this is the problem, this is how some people decided to respond to it. But these are the gaps that still exist. And this is the result or the implication as a result of this. So you prioritize evidence over assumptions. You use data, you use verified experiences, you interview a lot of people, you get a lot of credible voices, you use a lot of reputable reports, credible reports to enrich your story, as opposed to just focusing on what has happened. People should know what has happened, right? So let's look at some of the headlines. How can we go about framing our stories in such a way that we're not ignoring the attack or what has happened, we're not ignoring the conflict, we're not putting it aside, but instead we're applying a solutions lens. It's not that we're doing solutions journalism, because when we say we're doing solutions journalism, I think it sets off the idea that you have to go and start hunting for how people are responding. Is not about that. It's not about looking for a solution to report on per se. It's applying a solutions lens to reporting the issue. And I hope that we get that distinction. So what are examples of how we can frame this so that you can see what I mean in practice? So here we have the first headline: fake news floods social media ahead of elections. That's the truth, right? We've seen a lot of, and there are reports that back this up, a lot of fake news spreads on social media, especially around election. Nigeria is already in a political sensitive situation, a politically sensitive time. So everyone knows that in most social media, and I don't know if you've seen some of the news coming out of social media, but you are likely to see this kind of headline where they tell you, fake news is rampant. People can't tell facts from fiction anymore. AI generated clips, lies and all of that. So it's easy to come across such a headline where it says fake news floods social media ahead of elections, which is the truth. But if you were to apply a solutions lens, how would you report this without leaving out the truth, without embellishing statements or drawing people's attention away from the problem? And the example here, when you convert it, applying a solutions lens, is how fact-checking networks are battling election misinformation. It still carries the same idea of the news, which is that fake news is still being spread. There is misinformation. It is everyone knows it. It's already established that misinformation, fake news is already being shared on social media. But if you're applying a solutions lens, how do you report the same problem? That's why we have this headline here: how fact-checking networks are battling election misinformation. So you're still telling us that fake news is rampant and on social media. but you are showing us how fact-checking networks are working to address it. I think personally, I think that gives your story more depth. You are not looking straight into the problem. You're showing us how it is being addressed, and that gives you opportunity to even uncover the different layers of what is driving the fake news information system. How is it working? How is the fake news spreading? How is it influencing people? Is it political actors? Is it influencers? Is it everyday people? Is it engagement farming? What are the factors? What are the underlying factors driving this fake news? If you focused using the headline on the left, which is fake news floods social media, you just go ahead to present the facts, and you miss the opportunity to enlighten your audience. So again, there's a difference between informing your audience and enlightening them. And in this day and age, with all the conflict I've shared happening, from banditry to attacks to terrorism to political maneuvering to this one to that one, clearly we've established that we're in a conflict situation in this country. So what difference can you make as a journalist? What is your duty? What is the sense of duty that you carry with your job? That's the difference. And that can be the difference in empowering or disempowering your readers. That can be the difference in who gets voted for and who doesn't. Narratives, information is power, right? So let's look at the second example. Security forces struggle to contain rising violence. Again, this is true. And you've probably come across a similar type of headline where they show you that the Nigerian security forces are overwhelmed. Some of them say they don't have weapons to fight against terrorists. Some of them say that it is politically motivated. Some people say that, there are different versions of what constitutes as the truth. But I'm sure at some point you've come across the idea or even the headline that security forces are struggling to contain rising violence. Now, if you are operating from a responsibility to inform, then you can go ahead and run with this headline. You can do your story, publish, people will read it, people will click it. But what have you added? What kind of narrative have you added? What kind of thinking have you shaped? What have you influenced by publishing this headline on the left? Now let's look at the headline on the right. Community-led security initiatives are filling gaps left by state response. At what cost? You agree with me that this headline on the left and headline on the right are still talking about the same subject matter. They are still covering exactly the same thing. You're still pointing to the fact that security forces are indeed struggling. They can't contain the violence. This is what you mean here by the community-led security initiatives are filling gaps left by state response. So there's a gap, left by security forces. There's a gap, but you are applying a solutions lens and showing more perspective. You're giving us more perspectives around the same issue. It is at what cost? In the example that we considered earlier, is at when you're answering at what cost in this kind of story, based on the headline on the right. That's when you start to answer where the state is failing, where the government is failing. That's where you can even bring in how much has been expended or earmarked to tackle the same issue. What policy have been passed, or what policies should actually tackle this? Or, it helps you ask better questions when you apply a solutions lens. You're not just focused on the problem. If you do your security forces struggle to contain rising violence, you tell us that the army was posted there, but they don't have enough weapons. Their operations are being leaked or something. Basically, you're too focused on the problem, and so you cannot give us a broad view. There's no depth, there's no nuance to what you're reporting. You're just telling us, Kasala has burst, focus on it, this is it. But when you use the solutions lens and your topic or your headline is framed as the one on the right, you see that you give the opportunity to your readers to take action. So you go above just informing them to enlightening them, to showing them examples of what is working or not working, to even give them more opportunity to ask the state questions, right? Because when you say community-led security initiatives are filling gaps, the next question to ask is, why do those gaps exist? If we have security budgets, if we have budget for security, and Nigerian security does not even disclose how much goes to security, by the way, it is, God knows, trillions of dollars. Where's all that money going? Why are there still gaps? So I hope you can agree with me that applying the solutions lens gives you, it just grounds your story better. It gives you opportunity to ask questions that a problem-focused story won't let you do. Let's consider the last example, and I'll give opportunity for us to do a quick exercise after this so that we can interact and you can share your thoughts with me as well. This third example is deadly clashes displace hundreds in Plateau communities. Again, it's the truth. Deadly clash has happened. People have been displaced from their homes. We have a refugee situation on emerging. You know, there's a lot to question here. But if you focus solely on deadly clashes, you start to tell us what happened. Farmer headers came, this, that one, somebody died, people died, this one, some people escaped, some people are trying to, or some people, a community has been sacked, they now have to go to IDP camps. Like your story revolves around the problem only. And at that point or at that stage or at that level, you are just informing your readers. And that's all well and good. But again, consider that with social media, anybody can just share information to inform anybody. There's nothing special you're doing. But if you are a journalist, a storyteller who has a duty to enlighten their readers, who has a duty to uphold democracy and the sanctity of our society, you must go over just focusing on the problem to applying the solutions lens. And how would that play out with this headline? You have the example on the right. In Plateau, local peace committees are working to prevent further clashes. Can they hold? Even that can they hold already tells you all the people that you are going to be holding accountable in your story. Because yes, local peace committees are working to prevent further clashes, meaning clashes have happened. So you will still tell us clashes have happened, as in the case of the headline on the left. So you will still tell us the problem. You will still tell us who died or who didn't die. You still tell us the origin of the clash, whether it is farmer headers, whether it is peace community versus this, whether it's Omoinile versus this. You will still have to tell us even when you are applying the solutions lens. So it's not about ignoring the problem or not telling the truth or not causing chaos or panic or provoking retaliation. It's not about that. It is, does the story you are sharing or the story you are publishing, does it add, what does it give your reader? What does it help your reader with? Does it give them a better understanding of the situation? Does it provide depth? Is there nuance? Does it give your reader, when they finish reading your story, do they get a sense of, oh, wow, I can join forces with these local peace committees, or see what these local peace committees are doing? How can we study it and adapt it in our own community since we're facing similar issues? It's very important that your story is doing more to empower your readers than to disempower them. It's not enough for you to just inform. You must enlighten and you must drive specific action. And you do that successfully when you apply a solutions lens. I just wanted to emphasize that, right? But yeah, before we move on to the exercise, I would like to get your take as well. When you consider the headlines on the left and the solutions lens applied to the headlines on the right, how might each of these headlines, in your own opinion, influence trust in institutions or communities? And which of these headlines would you say is doing a better job at holding power to account? Let me hear. Anyone can feel free to unmute your mic and share. So consider the headlines, the one on the left and on the right. Which do you think plays? Which would you say? What information are you getting from the headlines? Which would you say is influencing trust? And which of these headlines would you say is doing better at holding power to account? Say we want to drag the government and call them out. Which do you think, which of these headlines, the ones on the left or the right, which do you think will do a better job? Hello, have I talked everyone to see?
Yeah.
Let me play music, please. Hello, anybody home? Anybody there? Please, let's hear.
We're
Both
here,
consider the
ma'am.
headlines here. Please go ahead
Right.
if you have something to say. Do you think these headlines, which of these headlines do you think influences trust in communities and institutions? And to simplify the question even further, which of these headlines do you think, in your own opinion, is doing a better job in holding the government accountable? Read the headlines carefully and tell me, which one do you think is doing better at holding the government accountable? Or which, based on the headline, what do you think will be contained in the story? What do you see contained in the story that would aid driving accountability?
Um, okay, first let me say well done, Ma. You did a very detailed job in your presentation. And my point of reference would be the second headline, which is Security Forces Struggle to Contain Rising Violence. Then the improved one is community-led security initiatives are filling gaps left by state response at what cost. So I think the first security forces struggle to contain rising violence already. Um, Anybody seeing that if you're part of the system, you're a government authority or body, or even the security agencies themselves, they will feel defeated, they will feel demoralized, they will feel like a clear case of journalists trying to sabotage what they are doing, I think, in my opinion. But seeing these community-led security initiatives are filling gaps left by state response, at what cost now? This already is welcoming, is positive, is again development or solution focus, just as we've established, in the sense that whoever sees this, you will want to go further to see what are these issues, what are these initiatives, and how can we even learn from them. So I think on the face value of this, without even going down to talk of the content, the one on the right, on my right, community-led security initiatives are filling gaps left by state response, is it will go a long way into welcoming these actors into your story, then opening their eyes to definitely what, in your opinion or in your assessment in the report, would show that they need to do more without really, bad mouthing or throwing them off guard or feeling, a bit of cat and dog relationship, relationship. And in this case, you could see why, in some cases, even the military wouldn't want to have reporters around, because they feel like you're always antagonistic, and you always want to find fault, and you always want to ridicule them. And another thing is that these kind of what you call it, security forces struggle to contain rising violence. It has a way of empowering those miscreants, if I would say, those non-state actors. Just imagine me being part of, a militant group or a bandit, seeing the security forces struggle to contain rising violence. It's like a win for me or for us in a way, because it seems like we're doing well and they're a bit gingered and encouraged, right? So I think this again buttresses the fact that we as journalists were supposed to, aside from reporting the facts and figures and everything, support in our reporting peace building efforts and even the securities in their work, and doing a kind of journalism that will go beyond the surface to look at the real issues, bringing contribution of every stakeholder, and now pointing at some of the downsides or the challenges, so that progressively, the people too would be open to, adjusting or doing something different. Perhaps when you do this story, community-led security initiatives are filling gaps. The state may invite them if before they do not recognize the role and the responsibility of these community initiatives or community actors in the crisis ecosystem completely. So I think community-led security initiatives are filling gaps left by state response at what cost is much more a welcome story, a welcome headline that would bring about needed kind of solution or needed, effort, development we want to see in our community.
Thank you, Nambo. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I also agree. For me personally, it's not only about contributing to or supporting peace-led initiatives, right? It is that we can still report on issues accurately, but instead of just presenting a negative frame or a disempowering frame, we can lead with solutions. We can lead with the responses. And it doesn't take away from us reporting about the deadly clash or the inadequacy of the security forces or the fact or the truth that fake news is everywhere on social media. It doesn't take away from the truth. It doesn't soften it. It doesn't reduce it. It doesn't lie about it. You are still talking about the same subject matter. You are still covering the same topic. You are still telling us people died, but you're doing that with a duty, a sense of duty of care. And I think that's the difference, and that's much more important. Does anybody else want to share what they think about these two different headlines when you're applying the negative frame and the solutions lens? Which do you think is doing a better job at holding the government accountable? Nambo already shared, and you can see in a situation where you're saying security forces struggle to contain rising violence. Okay, sorry, I already went on and on and on. Does anybody else want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, my network went off. I was trying to unmute myself earlier.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so I would say the headlines on the right and the second headline that said community-led security initiatives are filling gaps left by state response. At what cost? So yes, the problem statements would still be addressed, but like you said, it makes you think outside of the box. So these community-led security initiatives, in the long run, how sustainable are they and how beneficial? I will give example like maybe the vigilantes. I'm sure that's how the vigilante system started. These vigilantes also need to be funded, and the states, like the police and the military security forces we have, are also being funded by the government. Now, most vigilantes are either privately funded or community come together and fund it. So all these are things to be considered. How beneficial are they? And sometimes, for lack of a better word, these people end up being thugs. Either the community cannot sustain, paying for their services, so they end up most times being thugs that affect these communities. Increase crimes here and there. So that is also a cost. So and then I also asked the question, why is the state lacking? Why are the military, why are the security forces lacking if they are being funded? Yes, their budget is not being disclosed officially, but we assume that it is quite a lot of money. So if we're expending this huge amount, why are we not getting return on investment? So there are questions that need to be asked. It holds the government more accountable. And like I said, also there's this gap. Why is there this gap? What can we do to fill in the gap? Is it a behavioral issue? Is it a managerial issue? Like, how do we come together? So it makes, like I said, it helps you to think outside of the box. Even as the government, it helps you think outside of the box. Oh, we've been doing this method for years. Do you think there's something we should be doing differently? Or, taking examples from other countries, stuff like that. What else do we need to implement? What policies do we need to change or come up with, rebuttress and stuff like that? So yes, I would go with that headline.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vicky. I think she also shared some very important context that we need to consider. So from just reading the headline, I know that Vicky is not a practicing journalist, but she's a storyteller. And you can already see the questions she's getting from reading the headline. She's already asking how sustainable are these community-led security initiatives? If they are vigilantes, who is paying? Is it the community or the government, right? What is the possibility that there will be thugs tomorrow if they stop getting paid and they will continue disturbing the communities? So again, when you apply a solutions lens, it gives your story much more power because you have room to ask better questions and more questions than when you just focus on the fact that in this case, security forces struggle to contain rising violence. I hope that we are getting that distinction and we are tying it to how it makes us how it makes us much more responsible journalists. And we have a duty. I think I'm trying to emphasize that as much as I can. There's in this day and age when they say AI is coming to take your job, how are you ensuring that's not happening? How are you showing that there's a human behind the pen? How are you showing that as journalists we have a responsibility to do what? Tell the truth, uphold our democracy, and hold power to account. And if you are set to achieve those fundamental things that govern or guard our work as journalists, then you should, even from these headlines alone, you should see the difference you are making by choosing to apply a solutions lens versus when you just go ahead and run with the facts and present it because you think you have a responsibility to inform readers. You do have a responsibility to inform readers, but at what cost? Right? And you achieve even much more when you apply a solutions lens. And from what Nambol and Vicky have shared, you can already see your questions, the questions you ask, the way you cover the story, what you help your readers understand, the power that the seeds that you plant in their minds, and how that translates to and influences the narratives that are being shared on social media and how people act in our democracy is important. So if your duty is to do what to achieve the fundamental or the cardinal what would I how will I say it? If your duty is to journalism is to help understand that stories shape public understanding, then you must at this point accept that moving forward you would at least consider applying the solutions lens when you're covering conflict is important. So that said, I want us to do a quick exercise, right? And it's just
Okay. Oh,
to,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Before we continue with the exercise, I'm so sorry for interrupting. I think Dr. Bashir Zubair dropped a response in the chat box, and it says that it has been a very impactful session. I must acknowledge. Thank you for the dedication and hard work. Coming to the question, the one on the right side is actually presenting the issue very well without even diverting attention from the topic and also looking beyond the current problem, thus highlighting underway solutions. So I think Dr. Zubair is also
Yeah, so we
supporting
all
that the
agree.
solution
We all
framework.
agree, yes. So we're all in agreement that when you apply a solutions
Yeah.
lens, it doesn't take away from the story, but in fact, it improves it. It improves the story. It gives room for the reader to understand the issue at a deeper level. And it also calls to it holds the institutions that should be responsible accountable. You don't take away from the story. Instead, you add to it. You provide depth. You provide better questions. You ask better questions. And at the end of the day, you're doing your work as a journalist, which is not to just inform people, but to empower them with information that they can use to take decisions about their lives. Right? So let's move on to the exercises or the exercise. I have two questions for you. I have two headlines here. I would like for us to read the headlines and rewrite them using a solutions lens. The first one is thousands flee communities in Benue following fresh wave of attacks. How would you, if you were applying a solutions lens, how would you frame this headline? Considering everything we've discussed so far, how would you frame this first headline? Anyone is free to unmute and share their thoughts. Thousands flee communities in Benue following fresh wave of attacks. How would you reframe this headline? Applying a solutions lens. I see Senior Yauza is on the call. If you can hear us, we would like your expert's view on how to apply a solutions lens to this headline. Thousands flee communities in Benue following fresh wave of attacks. Can you give us a solutions journalism version based off your expertise of over publishing over, is it 200 stories? I think Yauza has personally published over 200 solution stories, but I mean, who's counting? Yauza, are you with us, please? Okay, I don't think Yauza is with us. Anybody wants to try? How would you reframe this headline? Consider the two, whichever one. Tensions rise in Rivers as political clashes disrupt campaign activities. Please share. How would you reframe these headlines? Salim is on the call. Hi, Salim. We haven't heard from you. Rume is on the call. Bushra is on the call. I'm calling people who haven't spoken at all. Please share. How would you reframe this headline, considering the examples we just looked at?
Okay, can I go ahead to say something?
Yes, please.
Okay. First, I will start by framing the headline of the story. The first one, I am referring to the first one, the thousand flee communities in Benue following fresh wave attacks. So I will go ahead with mentioning how communities, for example, in the headline been like how can I put it? CO reacts to early stage of the crisis. For example, if it has happened before and how it is going now, that is the process. Then there are efforts, more especially on peace building and the um, view, more especially regarded to the vulnerability category or gender perspective on this. So if okay, hello?
Yeah, go ahead. So how will you rewrite the headline? What will your new headline be?
The new headline can be how do I put it? Okay, let me write. I can set the okay. Sorry, let me type it so that I can read it directly.
Hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The new headline will be like this. How Benue communities are building resilience and need of new attack in their community. Yeah, the headline would be like this: How Benue communities are building like way forward at need of the attack or frequent attack that is happening, something like that.
Yeah, thank you. I like that headline. Anyone else? I see that Dr. Zubair has dropped his headlines. Oh, yeah, do you want to read it out? I should go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Dr. Zubair and Salim. So from Dr. Zubair now is from displacement to recovery, how Benue communities and security efforts are pushing back against persistent attacks. I love that. And then the second headline reads that beyond political clashes in Rivers, stakeholders forged part in 7. I love that newest attack. And I think I love that too, right? Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah. So yes, thank you
So
all
that's
for
it.
sharing. The idea was just to think through how we can reframe headlines even while covering conflict. Um, yeah, so I think that's all we have. The slides will be shared, so you can go over the exercise at your own time, sit down with the topics, and practice ways in which you can reframe it. You never know, maybe that could lead to your next story because you can then start doing research and you find peace leading efforts that are worth reporting on. And so finally, I would just like to know, after all we've talked about today, what are you taking away from this session? Um, we've already established that journalists are not the first to tell the story. Once something happens, people are already posting online and they're already posting different versions of the truth. But we know now, because journalists and the media are usually the first point of call, or at least are seen as custodians of the truth, you see that what we share, the stories we publish, shape what becomes accepted, what people see, and what people believe about the situation. So, having said all of this, from everything we've talked about today, what are you taking away from this session? What would you say you've learned, and what would you do different moving forward? Anyone? What do you think you would do differently moving forward?
All
And what are you
right.
taking away
Okay.
from this session?
Yeah.
Okay, Nambol wants to
Hello?
say
Hello?
something. Let
Yes,
Nambol
please
Okay.
go
go,
ahead.
then I'll
Okay.
go.
I think at the heart of what I'm taking out of this conversation, amongst other things, would be the point you kept re-emphasizing that we have to be responsible in our reporting. We owe it duty. It's a duty of all journalists not to escalate issues, not to worsen the already deplorable condition or situations of things, but we should put in a bit of rigor, a bit of ethical consideration, not avoiding the any part of the story, but in doing that, we do it constructively with a solution focus. Yeah. That's it
Yeah,
for me.
thank you so much. Um, so what
I,
would you be doing moving forward? What will you be doing differently moving forward?
okay, from my own perspective, I see there is a lot of what journalists need to do, more especially in terms of reporting uh, conflict or violence issue, where they need, or there is like kind of applying more responsibility and shying away from the old or traditional means of reporting, whereby they can be able to like apply accuracy more in terms of affected victims, where instead of reporting so amount, they need to have some kind of accuracy before reporting, and make sure when they are reporting, they doesn't like apply something that will harm the group of people, religious, ethnicity, or tribe. Then they need to like include the vulnerability boys more especially in terms of reporting, such as children and uh, young girls, women, and people living with disability, and they need to like hold government responsibility more in terms of reporting and what government like will do in terms to avoid or to make some kind of solution regarding to this.
Thank you. Thank you, Salim, and thank you, Nambo. Anyone else? What are you taking away from this session, and what are you committed to do differently moving forward? I see Nambo sharing his own headline. Thriving in the midst of chaos, stories of Benue communities in the face of insecurity and way forward. Okay, great. Anybody else want to answer as we wrap up? All right.
Okay. So for me, right, I take away so many things from this session, but I'll just stick to
Yeah.
So I realized that there are different ways to tell the truth, and it will still be the truth, just like you mentioned when you started. I could still frame an headline with solution perspective while still retaining what is wrong and what is you mentioned that we don't need to create a false balance. So instead of looking for solutions where there is none, why not look inward in what is already on ground instead of trying to create a false perspective or a false balance that there is balance in these stories while there is no balance in the story. I think I'm going to, instead of looking around for solutions, I think I'm just going to create balance. And thank you for the wonderful session. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for paying attention and for sticking with me through to the end. So this last slide is just so that it is ingrained in our heads that how we tell stories matter. You can focus on the problem and, fuel chaos, anarchy, let people go out of their minds, or you can still cover the same problem, applying a solutions lens, helping your readers understand it better, providing better context, asking more questions, and holding those who should be responsible accountable. One fuels chaos, one causes alarm, the other helps a society move forward, helps people decide, take decisions that can improve the situation where necessary. So, on that note, I'd like to thank all of you and leave you with one thing. So, during our workshop, I keep referencing the human angle, advancing security, and peace through journalism workshop because I had a good time learning from all the facilitators we had, and we had really great facilitators who also work at Human Angle. Anyway, during the workshop, they shared some souvenirs with us. One of it was this really nice book. I wish I could show you guys, but I just want to read something that is written on the book, and I think that they were very intentional giving us this. It says, every story holds power. The stories we choose to share can either bridge gaps, inspire empathy, and drive change, or do the opposite. So it's always our decision as journalists to decide because our words matter. So let them resonate. Let them be let there be stories that contribute to the development of our country as opposed to the breaking down and destruction of it. On that note, thank you all for joining and for paying attention and for making it an interactive session. The slides will be shared, and if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. We have our community for us to have this kind of conversations. If you're thinking to pitch a story, Social Voices will be happy to see your pitches. And if they're good, we'll be happy to support in any way we can, providing editorial guidance for you to publish. But leave this place with a different idea, with a different idea, with the thought that moving forward, you would apply a solutions lens in conflict reporting. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, that's a wonderful one. Thank you so much, Sheonduro Jaye, for taking us through this also amazing and beautiful experience. I mean, I got value. And thank you all so much for joining. Dr. Zubair, thanks for contributing. Namboy, Salim, it's really nice seeing you again here, right? Really, worries in absential, and every other persons that joined.